Good afternoon, everybody. How's everybody doing? All right, first and foremost, I want you to indulge me just a little bit. Give it up, give a big round of applause, and we're going to make this other room jealous a little bit. Give it up for Jake, Chris, Hope, and all the volunteers for putting on such a fabulous event. Can y'all do that for me? Good deal. Now, this is my first RVAsec. I have not been here before, but I'm enjoying myself. I mean, this is a well-organized event, and I'm going to tell you what, I love the badges. These are like the coolest badges. I never knew this was a thing until I started talking with some folks last night. So very cool. So welcome to today's session. So my name is Kyle King. I'm a security engineering manager for Checkpoint Software Technologies. Now, I'm also a member of the Office of the CTO, which basically means I get to do more things like this. I get to present, I get to go do podcasts and all kinds of things, on behalf of the company. Now, you've got my name, you've got my LinkedIn QR code. I encourage everybody to connect with me because I do enjoy connecting with everybody. I've been in the industry for quite some time, so always encourage people to connect with me. But now today, let's talk about AI. And more specifically, who's watching whom, right? Because AI is the big buzzword these days. You look around half of these presentations, and it's around AI, right? It's talking about features that their products are using AI, and how we look at things when it comes to our product set. But I also want to look at it from a hacker standpoint, because it is important to understand the bad stuff as well as the good stuff. So first, let's talk to you a little bit about me, and I'm just going to tell you, I grew up in a small town called Hickory, North Carolina, which if you're not familiar with it, it's about an hour northwest of Charlotte. Graduated from UNC Charlotte, computer science degree, but I've been working with Checkpoint Software Technologies for the last 9 years. I just celebrated 9 years this past May. And I actually started working with the product back in 1997, so I got some experience there. And a little fun fact, I am actually a certified fitness instructor, and I still teach a couple classes a week, and I've been doing that for 18 years or so. But like I said, I've been around the industry for a long time. When I first got in the industry, I'm going to tell my age, and probably some of you can relate. Wi-Fi was not even a thing. Everything was connected. You had desktops with 4 megs and 8 megs around. So that's how far back I go. Other than that, I live, it's me and my wife, and we have 3 kids, and I'm going to show my age. I have 5 grandkids. Luckily, we're empty nesters, so we get to travel a little bit more, but we spend time with our 3 dogs and travel a lot and go to Panthers games. And recently, I got into hiking, and last year we did a Grand Canyon hike, 17 and a half miles, down and back in one day, and then just 2 months ago, we did a Zion National Park hike, 18 and a half in just under 7 hours. But you didn't come here about me. You came to understand a little bit more of my conversation, and just to kind of give you some company background, if you're not familiar with who Checkpoint is, and it's okay if you're not, because I still run into people who don't know who Checkpoint is. Long story short, one of the oldest cybersecurity companies in the world invented a stateful packet inspection firewall back in the early 90s. Like I said, I've been messing around with the product since 1997 and have been throughout my career. Now, we're a global company. We have over 100,000 customers, operating in about 182 countries, have over 7,000 employees. And that's going to continue to grow this year as we continue to expand in the area of AI. With that said, we have a lot of accolades to our name, and you can go out there and research. I'm not going to go through them. Most recently, Newsweek's 2025 list of America's best cybersecurity companies. Now, here's a good thing. I am not here to sell you anything or talk about any products. So I think we can all agree that's a good thing, right? What I am here to talk to you about is a couple different facets around AI. First, let's talk about technology as a whole, how it's being used as a force for good. Then let's talk about how AI has now changed our mentality when it comes to technology in this hyper-connected world. And we'll talk a little more about that as we go through this. But lastly, I want you to take a look at 4 different viewpoints where cyber has intersected with AI and what that really means. What do we have to be concerned with? Because we have to be concerned with a few different aspects, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Well, let's start. I think we can all agree technology as a whole is a force for good, right? All right. What has it enabled us to do? It's enabled us to work from home. Because of COVID, everybody took a global snow day at the same time. But because we had the technologies in place, we were able to maintain business operations and allow those users to operate remotely. You think of travel back in the day, when I first got into industry, you may want to document what you did from a travel perspective. What did you have to pack? You had to pack maybe a map. You had to pack maybe a journal. You might have even had to pack a camera, whether it's big or small. Now look at it. It can be done with the device that's sitting in your back pocket. You don't have to take any more than that. So it's really enabled us. Social media has allowed us to connect with friends and family far, far and away, and they can be a part of our everyday lives. People with little to no automation knowledge can create automated tasks and do their jobs faster, more efficient. That's some of the good things. I think we can all agree those are pretty good things. And when I first got into industry, we didn't really have to worry about a lot of threats, but now we do. The threats are vast, and the more connected we are, the more rampant they're going to be. And when it comes to AI, and more specifically Gen AI, let's start. I'm going to give you my school of thought. First and foremost, AI is nothing new. We know that it's been in use. We know that it's been in use for years. Right? Google, Amazon, they had these predictive algorithms that would try to predict the words that we're going to type in that search box before we even typed it, right? That's what we did. Well, with Gen AI, we know we can take now that same text and we can generate a whole new thing. Maybe it's an image, a video, or music, or whatever. And we can build upon the context of what we ask it. So if we ask it to create a letter, and we say, okay, well, modify this letter to include this, and et cetera, et cetera. And when it comes to Gen AI, what we're looking at is we have three kind of schools of thoughts on this. You know, I've talked to customers in my conversations, they're going full all in with Gen AI. You know, they might be creating their own Gen AI model, you know, for something they use for their specific business, or maybe for the industry as a whole. And we got other schools of thought, they're kind of 50-50, right? 50-50 where it's like, yeah, I might start developing it, but I'm not going to allow my users to use it. And then we got the other side where we're going to stay far away from it, right? We've seen too many movies, we got the Terminators, and then we're going to stay completely away from it because we're scared to death of it. That's the kind of schools of thought I have when I go to customers and have conversations. Now, here's my take on it. Think of the internet when it became publicly available, right? People got these big old desktops, they set them on their desk, they plugged in a landline, they got connected to some ISP back in the day, AOL, right? I'm showing my age. They heard that screeching modem, again, showing my age. Some of y'all didn't have to deal with that. They got connected. Well, they're excited. Why? They never had to leave the comfort of their home, and they were connected to the outside world. They started reading some news, websites. They weren't as many as they are today. Every company's got a website today. Maybe got in some chat rooms. They sent an email, got excited when they got an email, but that's what they did. They didn't have to put a stamp on a letter and send it out. You know, these are the kinds of excitement that it created. But now fast forward to today, what happens? It's part of our everyday life. We get up every single morning, we look at news, we look at social media. We might watch highlights of some sporting event that we fell asleep on last night to finish it out. You know, we're watching events as we're on the golf course or at some other remote location. Email. Email's an annoyance these days, right? With all the spam and phishing attacks that we get. The number of threats that are attacking us as an organization, as a user, they're vast. But it's a part of our everyday lives. We're turning lights on because of the internet. That's where I think we are with Gen AI. We're in its infancy stage. It's going to be something big, but it's going to be something big at a later stage. And it's going to be part of our everyday life. So that's where I want you to think about it, because when we think of the investments within Gen AI, IDC reports with an investment of AI everywhere, you're going to get to the tune of $307 billion in 2025 alone, more than doubling by the 2028. And we already got executive orders out there about the safe and secure use of AI. So it is something that is going to continue in development and process. But when we think about the adoption of Gen AI, let's think of how quickly it took off. So if AI is no different than any other technology that has been, set upon us. For instance, newspapers. Newspapers, to reach market saturation, took about 100 plus years. Smartphones took about 2 decades. How long do you think it took Gen AI to reach 100 million active users? 2 months. To put that in perspective, TikTok took 9 months, YouTube, 1.5 years. Why? Because people were curious. They heard what it could do, and they wanted to test it out for themselves. Do you think your users are not already curious about doing this? Absolutely. But how does it interact? When we talked about hyperconnectivity and all the devices that are out there and how they're connected to the internet and to us, how does Gen AI impact that world? Well, I think we got to take a step back and we got to look at the technology evolution. Look at where we started and look where we are today and everything in between, where we do have easy access to things like mobile devices, smart AI applications, all of these kinds of things. And what we're seeing is the digital world and the physical world, they're intertwined to the point where our human brain can no longer understand what's real and what's fake. That's what it's creating. And a lot of these things are being created through the use of new tools like, quantum computing, faster connectivity like 5G, other AI models, the evolution of other AI engines that are continuing to come out. That's what it's creating. But this is the bad side to this. Look at the evolution. Here's that technology evolution. Look at the attackers and look where we are as practitioners. Very different. Why? Because the attackers, they adopt this technology very, very quickly. They want to use it. They want to create those more sophisticated attacks. They want to create those more targeted spear phishing campaigns or whaling campaigns. We, on the other side, what do we have to deal with? A technology stack that's very old, that has no understanding of these more sophisticated AI-generated attacks. Very complex systems, systems that don't talk to each other, that create that gap in visibility. How many tools do you have to manage to protect your organization? Probably too many, I'm gonna assume, because that's generally what happens. The attackers know this. They know that all of these security tools that we use have some type of vulnerability. So they're more able to create different style of attacks in a matter of minutes versus days with the use of Gen AI. Agentic AI, and it's going to take it even a step further, where now we can start making decisions faster and building attacks quicker. Down here, on the defender side, we still have to deal with budgets. We still have to deal with change controls. We still have to deal with staffing shortages. How do we bridge that gap? Right? That's what we need to start thinking of, because it is very important that we understand that that gap exists, and this is not going to stop on the attacker side. It's only going to get more increased in the number of attacks. Phishing attacks, deep fakes, more sophisticated. And it's disrupting the world in such a way that we hardly can keep up. Now, I want you to think about user education back in the day. Nigerian prince, right, sends an email, it's got bad grammar, bad spelling, right? Maybe has an attachment that you weren't expecting, maybe somebody coming from somebody you didn't know, right? It checked all the boxes from a user education standpoint to understand that that was probably a phishing email, right? As a matter of fact, I actually had this happen at a potential customer, I should say. I walked in there and they were dealing with an instance where a user had clicked on an attachment that created an event on their machine. And while I was talking to them, this is funny, and I'm sure everybody can probably relate to this in some form or fashion. They were telling me that, yep, it checked all the boxes for the user. They knew it was from somebody they weren't expecting. They knew it contained an attachment with a weird name, had bad spelling, bad grammar, check, 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 right? So why did they click on it? Anybody want to guess? They were curious. Right? So as long as there's human beings involved, we're going to have a job, so I'm not worried about that. But everybody can have that same kind of story in here. Fast forward to where Gen AI comes into the model. Now, no grammar errors, no spelling errors. The attachment look identical to something that you would expect. It can be a name that you would expect. The user can be from somebody that you think is a valid user. The verbiage in the body of the text sounds like somebody from down the hallway because they extracted some information from social media. Looks legit. But again, back to that human brain scenario, we cannot comprehend any more than that. To us, it checks all the good boxes. And that's where we need to think about our solutions that are protecting our organization and our users. Another example. Checkpoint did a blog research, and you can go out there and read more about it. But Clean AI is a valid site. You can put in some kind of text prompt, and it'll spit you out some kind of JPEG. It'll spit you out a video, music, whatever you want it to do. Well, what was happening is this was an ad that was floating around on social media. So that social media, people click on it. They'd go to what appeared to be the valid website. They'd put in their prompts. They'd get a message that says, hey, your file's ready to be downloaded. They would download it. And it looked like a valid name. But once they clicked on it, there was some masquerading techniques going on behind the scenes, and it was installing a wrap. Very easy to do. So it's very easily faked. So these kinds of campaigns can be easily created to mimic an identical looking site or document or whatever to try to trick users into clicking on it. Right? How's it Gen AI going to be? This was put out by the FBI just recently. Smishing, vishing. Trying to build trust coming from some senior executive to build rapport, to infiltrate and gain access to sensitive information. Now, I'm sure all of us have, I know I've received this about once a day, maybe twice a day. How many people get these annoying smishing texts which says, hey, you're delinquent on your tolls? I know I get them all the time. Yeah, they're annoying. And things like vishing is very impactful because now it only takes roughly, 30 seconds to create that authentic sounding voice. Somebody calling the help desk, hey, reset my password. Maybe it's a grandparent, right? I recently did a podcast talking about mental health and victims of fraud. And as part of that, one of the focus points was like how the attackers are preying on the elderly. Using those vishing campaigns to be some family member that's in dire straits or in debt or whatever to gain access to those money, right? It's that easy to happen. Do you think it's going to happen to an organization? Absolutely. 100% it will. It's just a matter of, when. And the thing that we have to understand is that this is our hyper-connected world. When I first started in the industry, everybody existed behind the same four walls. Again, I said before Wi-Fi was even a thing. Your users, your data, your email, everything existed right there. A good firewall and antivirus, that's all you need. Now, where's all your data? It's no longer sitting on a data center, mostly. It's probably entered in some SaaS application. You have remote workers. They're accessing things through maybe some corporate laptop, maybe some BYOD. They're accessing resources on their phone. You have people all around the globe, right? Help desks. Help desks used to be confined inside of a building. Now that help desk has been spread out to the home. You've got cloud assets that you have to worry about. And cloud, how many things do you have to secure in cloud? Right? You got containers, you got workloads, you got databases, you've got identity access management. There's all kinds of things. The list goes on and on and on and on. You have contractors that need access. You've got, from across the globe that maybe is helping you develop something. You have HVAC systems that need access to report data. Right? Everything is in that realm. But now here's the question. How many tools does it take to secure your organization when you think of the hyper-connected world? Do you have 5, 10, 15, right? Do they talk to each other? Does your firewall tell your endpoint security, hey, I saw this new signature, now I'm going to let you know about it so you're protected against it, or vice versa? How are you bringing all that information together so that you have a complete viewpoint of what is happening in your environment? These are the things that we have to think about. Are you using traditional tools? Are you using legacy email gateways that were built for on-prem email systems, not the cloud? I know email solutions, just kind of give you an example, I know there's some email solutions that allow emails, malicious emails, to sit in the inbox for as long as 3 minutes. Here's a good stat for you, 83 seconds. 83 seconds is all it takes from the time an email arrives in the inbox that some user is clicking on that email or attachment and entering some sensitive information. 3 minutes, 83 seconds, it doesn't equate. What tools are you using and how are you managing it? How many people do you have to manage it? Do you have 3, 5, 10? Right? There's staffing shortages, we know that. So all of this has to be taken into account as we talk about the world of Gen AI, because the attack surface is getting broader and your tool sets are remaining the same. Remember that gap that we showed. And this is where I want to kind of get into the 4 points of where AI has met cyber. And when we talk about AI meeting cyber, we have to look at things. And I want to think of it as the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I'll continue with the ugly side of things. First and foremost, I've already said it, attackers are going to continue to use it. They're going to take advantage of this new technology. It's easy to deploy, it's easy to develop, it's allowing faster, more sophisticated attacks. So it's a force multiplier. We have to be concerned about CVEs, the use of agentic AI where it's understanding those CVEs and then can take the information from some probe and immediately take advantage of potential vulnerabilities that exist. We have to be concerned about the deepfakes getting more sophisticated, more real, understanding that reality versus what's fake. Phishing campaigns, they're more targeted, they're more successful because your tools don't understand it. All of the info stealers can grab the information such as tokens, keys, passwords. They're going to be able to generate attacks much faster than you'll be able to change your passwords or your keys, right? Think of all these AI models that are allowing people to use, you're allowing people to use it, and your coders are putting in code that contains sensitive information. And I say that because I can tell you, I've seen plenty of corporations have a lot of exposed password and keys up on GitHub, and that's what they use in public. And when we think about the attacks themselves, it's very damaging in terms to our organization's wallet. IBM, Checkpoint, and others, it's estimated $10.5 trillion in damages by the end of 2025 alone. What we've seen is a 50% increase of your cyber attacks year over year, 150% in cloud. Just in cloud. Just because the cloud, again, very complex type of scenario. Ransomware, Gen AI, we've now gone from days to create attacks to minutes. That time's going to decrease. With an average, according to IBM, cost of the data center breach report of around $4.8 million per breach. Now, I'm not saying that you're going to have you're simply going to write a check for $4.8 million, but you got to think of that, this could go on for a couple of years, many years. We're talking about brand recognition, cyber insurance, forensics information that you have to gather, maybe new security tools that another tool that you may have to install and manage. We're talking about litigation costs that you may have to incur. Right? All of these things combined over the course of months, years, whatever it looks like, is going to equate to that $4.8 million. It's very costly. Intangible costs like your workers that stayed up all night to recover all this. And what we see is the trends for 2025. And this is where I want to spend a little bit more time because AI is definitely impacting every single one of these. And Gen AI is too. So Gen AI is very impactful and creating a lot of disinformation campaigns. If I'm a nation state, I'm going to use the Gen AI created content in order to disrupt elections. Do you think the same thing can cause brand recognition type issues for your organization? 100%. Ransomware. Where did ransomware start, right? Something got encrypted, we paid a ransom, and we sent it through some crypto account, and then boom, we got the decrypt key, and it sometimes worked or sometimes didn't, right? Well, now look what you got with ransomware. Double extortion, triple extortion, data exfiltration. Ransomware as a service groups, 46 were created year over year. FunkSec, already using Gen AI in its ransomware campaigns and DDoS campaigns. Ready-made kits are out there for ransomware. You can get into them for very low cost, or you pay a little bit more and you get support and updates. It's kind of crazy to think about, but that's what exists. I cannot tell you, I mean, as a company, we've been brought into various things because an executive posted something on social media and they took offense to it, so they targeted that organization. It's amazing to see how quickly they are seeing the information you're putting out there. Info stealers, 58% year-over-year increase, but with Gen AI, that data it exfiltrates, it's able to go through it real quick. It's able to extract that information, such as passwords, such as keys, such as tokens, and use it to create attacks before you can even change your password. This next one, very near and dear to my heart, and I'll tell you why. Prior to my life at Checkpoint, I spent a lot of time in the data center. I was racking and stacking equipment. I was hands on a keyboard. I was putting in edge security devices. I was putting in infrastructure, gear, route, switch, whatever. That was my job. As somebody that's a practitioner, if my edge device has a lot of vulnerabilities that is protecting the front door to my organization, that's probably not a good thing to have. If I'm sitting in the data center every single week or every single month patching my edge device, well, guess what? I might want to rethink what I'm using. Again, attacks are going to happen in minutes, not days. So by the time a CVE comes out, you won't even be able to patch fast enough before the attackers are knocking on that door of that vulnerability. Why? What do we have to deal with on the organization side? We have to deal with change controls. We got policies and procedures we have to fight. We have change freezes that we can't overcome. These are the kinds of things we face, and the attackers know this. They're going to go after them. They're going to use agentic AI to understand the CVEs that are coming out and create those different type of attacks. Cloud. Cloud is a very, very, very complex animal, is it not? Look at all the aspects of cloud. You've got network security. You've got API security. You've got workload security. You've got container security. You've got identity access management. And that list continues to grow. Why should we have this different tools protecting our organization in the cloud than we would have for an on-prem data center? Why should we have a gap in visibility, right? I don't care what you use, but if I was building an on-prem data center, there are certain tool sets that would make sure that I'm adhering to certain compliance regulations that are protecting my front door, that I would maintain a certain posture. Shouldn't you have that same mentality as you shift to cloud? Absolutely. If you're using native tools, is that providing you the visibility? If you're using multiple clouds, how many dashboards do you have to maintain? How are you bringing all that information in together so you can understand it and make informed decisions? These are the kinds of things I think about when I see organizations talk about cloud, but they're doing just enough. They're not really taking it for what it's worth and making sure that it's secure as they would secure their on-prem organization. And it's costly. It's costly to have some type of breach. According to Deloitte, just in the US alone, just based on fraud, $40 billion by 2027 is going to be the cost just of fraud. And it happens all the time. We get all these texts. And again, I told you I was doing a podcast for with a mental health expert around fraud. And it was talking about fraud for consumers, not necessarily organizations. But as I'm sitting here having this conversation with him, I'm getting a text from a friend that clicked on one of these smishing links. It just happens that frequently. And the reason why is because how sophisticated the deepfakes, the phishing, the smishing attacks are going to be. As a matter of fact, according to Verizon Data Center breach, the number of AI-generated malicious emails has more than doubled over the last couple of years. It's not going to stop. It's only going to get worse. So we have to understand and have the tools in place to be able to understand those types of attacks. And the attacks themselves, we saw a 50% increase year over year. This is data that we collected, but just in the education sector alone, and I know it's an eye chart for those in the back, 3,500 attacks per week on just that one sector. 75% increase year over year. And all it takes is one way to get in to impact an organization. But if I'm an attacker, I'm also going to look at our supply chain type of attacks. I'm going to go after those software vendors that I'm connected with that are supplying me updates, because now if I can get a part of them, guess what? I impact more than one organization, maybe the globe. Same thing with hardware and semiconductors. So this is why tools are important to understand those different types of attacks to protect us from those vulnerabilities before they can impact us. Because it is costly. Average of $4.8 million according to IBM Data Center Breach report. Phishing attacks, roughly 15% of the attacks. Business business email compromise, 10% of attacks, roughly 4.8. Insider threats, 4.9 million in the cost of a breach. What are attackers looking for? They're going after disgruntled employees that are posting regularly on social media. They're also planting people inside an organization. It's crazy to think about, but that's actually happening. Stolen credentials, info stealers. They're going to be used before you can even change the passwords. So these are the kinds of things that we have to consider when we take into cost of a breach. Now, it's not all doom and gloom, and the reason why I say that, there are things that can offset the cost of a breach. So for instance, something as simple as employee training. It can offset the cost of a breach by $258,000. So what you're seeing is everything on the left can be a positive towards the cost of a breach. Anything on the right is a negative. So for instance, top one, security system complexity. The negative to the cost of the breach is $256,000. So you got positive cost, negative cost. They're basically a wash if you think about security training versus complex systems. Maybe systems that don't have any kind of AI functionality understanding these newer threats. Maybe it's just back to 5, 10, 15, 20 different tools that you're using to maintain the security inside your organization. These are the things that kind of compile against that. Now, one thing I will say that I think really should be there is user training, effective user training, I should say, when it comes to utilizing Gen AI models. So if you're allowing your users to use this, you need to have training to also show them how to use it safely. So I highly encourage that. So that's the ugly side of things. I think we can all agree with that, right? Well, let's take about the good. I'm not going to get into the bad yet, so we've talked about the ugly. Let's talk about the good. So here's the good side. It's also going to be a force multiplier for us as practitioners. I think pretty much there's a lot of tools out there today that are integrating some type of AI augmentation as part of their security tools. I know we have one, we call it AI Copilot, right? I think everybody has an AI Copilot. But we do in our security tool. And when we think about how that can be used to the good, well, let's think about I'm analyzing the number of logs, the information in the logs to understand what my attack surface, what was knocking at my door for the past day, past week, whatever. I'm trying to find that needle in the stack of needles. Maybe I want to put some guardrails in place to help protect from compliance irregularities. Maybe I want to use it to help me optimize my policy. Maybe I want to ask it why can't this person access this resource? And maybe it tell me where to put that rule in the rule base. Or maybe it can help me clean up some of the unused hits, right? Some of the unused rules that haven't been hit in a while. I know everybody will love this, and how about I get it to generate me an audit report for my auditors, right? I know I hated going through audits back in the day because I had to print so much information off, but if I could easily create a report and have AI do that for me, I'm all happy. So these are the kinds of things that we can take a look at doing, but then we can eventually grow beyond that. So we can look at for it to be fully autonomous, where it's seeing certain types of log data, and it's understanding that that could be a potential threat, and it's putting the protections in place. Maybe it's taking a look at the newer CVEs that are coming out, and we're saying, hey, anything above this level, I want you to make sure you enable this IPS protection. These are the kinds of things that are possible. And I'm not saying you're going to get there day one, right? Where are we today? We're here at level 0. We're manual policies. We've been doing this all along, potentially. You know, we created a rule base. We get tickets. You know, that has to go in some information. Blah blah blah. We create the change, right? But now we're starting to do some AI assistance. We're helping us understand the data. We're helping us understand, you know, where things are not working like they should. Maybe we can optimize it better. Maybe we start taking a look at where, you know, we're starting to see a problem where memory is being consumed in certain times of the day, and now we have it help us out understand why that's the case, what's transpiring, whether it's a process, whether it's certain traffic types that's creating that problem. So we don't have to open up a TAC ticket. Or maybe we've seen fluctuations in power, and it's able to alert on that before we have to open up a TAC ticket for maybe a bad power supply. These are the kinds of things that it can do. Well, maybe we want to start allowing AI to do things, but we're going to kind of watch it. Meaning, we're going to say, hey, yes, why can't this person access this resource? But, hey, here's why. Do you want me to go ahead and create this rule for you? Sure. Now, we don't have to do it manually. To the point where we're fully autonomous, back to watching things for us while we sleep. Understanding some of these things, these attack surfaces that are coming through. Maybe they try to see some data exfiltration taking place through DNS traffic. Well, we can understand that and put those protections in place automatically. Or a new CVE comes out about a vulnerability, and we enable those IPS protections. Whatever the case may be, these are the kinds of things that are possible for the good use of AI. And why do we need it? It's because we continue to face staffing shortages. I think we can all say we probably do more with less, right, when it comes to security. We're managing multiple tools, and we don't have enough resources to be able to support those tools. It's creating a staff shortage. You can see up here, this is a struggle to find qualified candidates to be able to support the tools they have in place. Here's what happens, right? I think we can all relate to this. When organizations, they get a new tool. It's a new shiny toy. They want to play with it, right? So they go real quickly to implement it. They stand it up. Help with professional services. The partners end up helping, whatever. But they only get it to about 80 to 90% complete in terms of setup because their priorities get changed and they get pulled into a completely separate direction. Maybe it's a direction for the business. Maybe it's a direction for some other security tool that gets bought. Fact of the matter is, the organization paid for this. They want to see a return on their investment. IT is a cost center, right? If the business has a marketing or some type of activity that's going to generate business, guess what? IT tends to take a back seat. And it's that 10 to 15% gap in that configuration that relates into those breaches normally. And then we get back into the vicious cycle, new tool, now we're paying $4.8 million per breach. That's the kind of thing that it creates. So what do we need? Well, staffing shortages actually cost companies more when it comes to the cost of a breach, to the tune of $1.76 million. But as you can also see, companies are also taking advantage of some AI augmentation, some AI tool set. Because it's very important to understand that we need these tools to help us out. Right? We have limited resources. We cannot be subject matter experts over every single tool we have in place. Right? If I'm an upper right quadrant type of person, and I purchase everything in the right quadrant, Now, I might have a solution for email security. I might have a solution for endpoint security, and none of these talk to each other. But I only have a certain amount of staff to be able to support this. Somebody wants to take vacation ultimately. Does that other person know how to configure that other application? Maybe, maybe not. It's a big problem. That leads me into, I'm going to say the bad. And I'm not going to say overly bad, right? This is the bad part. So we got the ugly, we got the good. Let's talk about a couple of bad things. How to secure your AI usage. You know, organizations are starting to develop their own Gen AI models. You know, prior to, newer technology coming out, newer AI, LLMs coming out, what we saw is a shift back to the on-prem data center. Power, compute, storage, it was necessary. They're building it for maybe some call center application, maybe some help desk application, it doesn't really matter. But they started developing their own. And what ended up happening is now you got these big data lakes that you're creating, and you've got to control who's accessing what when. So you're going to have to understand who has access to the data, who has access to the code, whether or not it's exposed directly to the internet. These are the kind of considerations that you have to take into account is if you're creating your own AI model. But more than that, you have to think about injection controls. This has always been the case. Ever since I've been, even going through college, your data is, you got garbage in, you get garbage out, right? Same thing with AI. You put garbage in, you put garbage out. So your models are only good as the information going in. So if you don't have some type of injection controls preventing that, then you're going to get a bunch of garbage out. So what type of controls are you putting in place in order to protect your model that you're building? Right? You don't want to have a call center application that's giving bad advice or leading you down a path where you're not going to get support at all. You're only going to get frustrated customers. And this leads me to my last viewpoint, talking about another bad thing. Again, not bad. It's talking about the use of AI within your organization. We saw how quickly the adoption of ChatGPT, right? When ChatGPT was introduced, 2 months to reach 100 million users. People were curious. People were wanting to understand how to use it. Here's the other thing you got to think about. Your users are wanting to use it. They have daily tasks they do every single day that are mundane, and they want to do them faster and more efficiently. They don't want to get a request at 4:30 and stay well past 5 o'clock because they have to be somewhere at 6 o'clock. You're kind of impeding on their time. So that's what we've got to take into account. And what we look at is, according to Verizon Data Center Breach Report, we see that roughly 14% of your workers are already using some type of Gen AI application once every 15 days. So it's already happening, especially if you're not blocking it, right? Now, what does that look like? First off, about 72% of those using some type of Gen AI application is using some personal email address. That's how they're accessing it. So no ties to the corporation at all. So you don't understand what they're doing. 17% are using some type of corporate email, but that corporate email has no ties back to the corporation as a whole. So there's no authentication checks. There's no data leak protection. So you do not know whether or not your coders are putting sensitive information into these public AI models. You do not know if somebody's creating a press release for their quarterly financial report that's putting in sensitive information before it gets exposed. Or some type of press release, maybe for a new acquisition, that contains the name of the company that's being acquired. Insider trading. These are kinds of things that we have to educate our users on. Back to that data center, IBM data center cost of a breach. This is that education I was mentioning. How are you allowing? What tools do you have in place to understand this? What tools exist to say, hey, I'm going to stop this information from being put in to this Gen AI, public Gen AI model. They're using it. I guarantee you. I bet you have a gap in your visibility on what they're doing. And I bet you're going to have some data leaks for sure. You know, because, look, Gen AI can be used for anything. All right, we know that. I know of companies that have had problems where people are creating fraudulent expense reports because of Gen AI. It's that easy to work with. That's what they're doing with it. Now, granted, that's a bad case scenario, but so are the other things. So we got about 2.5 minutes left, so I'm going to start wrapping things up. AI in general, but Gen AI is also going to be a force multiplier. It's going to be a force multiplier for the good side. It's going to be a force multiplier for the bad side. The attackers, they're not going to hold back from grasping hold of this technology fast. They're going to use it to their advantage. Right? They have a lot of connected devices around the globe to go after. Remember back to that edge device vulnerability. They're going to use those models to understand the information it receives from some probe and go after those entities with some known vulnerability attack measure. Our tool sets have to understand these more sophisticated attacks. They have to be able to, they're the only things that's going to be able to help us. Because again, we can only comprehend so much as a human brain. That information is going to come at us so fast, we are not going to be able to keep up. So that's why these tool sets are highly critical. We have to evolve with AI. We have to grow with it. We can't just say it's some other thing we have to deal with. Use it to your advantage. We see the staffing shortages. Why not take advantage of it and allow it to help us? Lastly, what I'll say, we're all in the same boat. I don't care if it's me up here on the stage, you sitting at the table, somebody walking down the street. Everybody's being impacted by the use of Gen AI. They're being targeted. They're trying different ways to get into your organization. They're trying new ways to exfiltrate data from you, to gain access to that sensitive information. So attackers are not straying away from it. We as defenders need to take advantage of it. And here's my challenge to you. Take action and evolve with it. So I know we finished about a minute early. Hopefully that satisfied some curiosity, but if you got any questions, feel free to come talk to me. And if you want to learn more about Checkpoint, you can stop by the booth. Otherwise, thank you all for being here. I really do appreciate it.